Hey guys, does Otega Oweh need a little help from his Kentucky teammates to get going? He hasn't been the player the BBN expects, and now we're wondering what Oweh's next games will be like, or rather, what they might be like. Let's take a closer look. The season has begun, and with it came unease within the BBN. Otega Oweh, touted in the preseason as a favorite for the SEC Player of the Year award, hasn't yet found the guiding light that propelled his rise last season. The number one player, who should be shining as the protagonist, has become a central issue, not because of his greatness, but because of doubt. There's talent, history, and expectation, but the gears are missing. And gears in basketball are always a collective effort. Oweh may be the engine, but without the rest of the machinery working, the car spins its wheels. In the two losses that sounded the alarm, Mikel Brown Jr., Louisville, and Jackson Kohler, Michigan State, were everything Kentucky expected Oweh to be. While they dominated their matchups, Oweh faltered, lost his composure, and failed to assume the leading role his label demanded. When the star on the other side decides, and his doesn't follow, the score almost always tells the same story, and it did. It's not about lack of effort or talent. It's about adjustment, confidence, and perhaps even a momentary disconnect from the plan that made him so dominant before. Oweh wants and needs to expand his game. Internal reports point to a greater focus on the mid-range, on shots that project his transition to professionalism. The problem is that this attempt at evolution has cost him what made him most lethal: aggressive penetration, physical contact, vertical attack on the rim. In trying to prove he can be a complete player, he may have strayed too far from what made him special. The desire to grow is legitimate, even necessary, but the fine-tuning between technical evolution and identity hasn't happened yet. And it's at this point that the responsibility ceases to be solely his. Otega Oweh is better when the team breathes space, when defenses need to respect outside shots, and, therefore, open up corridors for him. Without that, he finds himself trapped between two worlds: the shot that isn't yet ready and the penetration that encounters compact walls. Kentucky, today, converts only 32.7% on three-pointers, a significant drop compared to 37.4% last season. A statistical detail that becomes a tactical symptom. Chandler has carried a good part of the burden, but he can't shoot for everyone. The roster has shooters, but still lacks reliability. The good news for Mark Pope is that there's a solution in sight. Jalen Lowe is back, and with him can return the fluidity, the extra pass, and the spacing that Oweh needs to breathe. An Otega with an open court is a dangerous Otega. An Otega pressured to make decisions alone is simply a stifled talent. The next step of the season may not even be about him changing, but about the team allowing him to be who he has already proven himself capable of being. The next few games will inevitably be an emotional barometer. If a drop in confidence brings down an athlete, a great performance restores everything at once. All it takes is a hot night, a game where the outside shots fall, where Lowe distributes, where Chandler draws defenders, and Oweh finds space to return to being vertical, incisive, dominating the paint and the decisive possessions. If that happens, the entire turbulent beginning may become just a prologue, a reminder that the protagonist doesn't always appear on the first line of the script. The BBN is uneasy, but still waits. And perhaps waiting is, for now, the wisest course of action. Because talent isn't lost, it's only reorganized. Oweh hasn't ceased to be the player who impressed the country. He's just trying to discover the best version of himself within a team that is also trying to discover itself. If Kentucky finds its pitches, it will find its way. Braden Hawthorne's situation at Kentucky basketball is a perfect example of the tension between immediate ambition and long-term strategic planning. Mark Pope, in his management of the program, faces one of the most delicate decisions any college coach can have. The balance between exploiting the talent available now and ensuring that the development of a player with unlimited potential is not compromised by momentary pressures. This crossroads places Hawthorne at the center of a debate that goes far beyond minutes on the court or accumulated statistics. It's about shaping the future of a young athlete whose ceiling seems as high as the giants who have already passed through the program. Hawthorne brings to mind inevitable comparisons with Tayshaun Prince, one of the most iconic stars in Kentucky history. However, while Prince had a more consolidated physique when he arrived at the university, Hawthorne is still in an early stage of his physical development. He is extremely thin to compete in a position that demands constant physical contact against stronger and more experienced opponents. This contrast between potential and current maturity makes the decision regarding his redshirt year of competitive absence, even more complex. Mark Pope has been transparent about the dilemma. In his words, there is a clear admiration for Hawthorne's talent, but also a pragmatic concern about the right time to integrate him into the main team. This kid, I don't know when it's going to happen, but I think he has the potential to be special, Pope said in August. The phrase sounds like an acknowledgement that the kid has all the tools to become a standout player in the NBA, but the win is still an unknown. The coach knows that transforming potential into production requires time, patience, and often sacrifices. The current scenario of the Kentucky roster reinforces this need for caution. With a rotation already full of talented players and the imminent arrival of Jaden Quaintance, one of the most anticipated prospects of the season, the space for experimentation diminishes considerably. Adding Hawthorne to this mix could mean sparse minutes and limited opportunities, something that perhaps doesn't do justice to his enormous potential. Furthermore, Jalen Lowe's return to games adds another layer of complexity to the team's dynamics. On the other hand, there's the argument that playing time is invaluable for any player's growth. Even if Hawthorne starts as a reserve or has a secondary role, the experience gained in real games could accelerate his mental and emotional development. In college basketball, where the pressure and speed of the game far surpass the training environment, learning to make quick decisions under stress is a skill that cannot be taught solely in control drills. Pope recognizes this value, but cautions he also needs to evolve now. He has a lot of potential to grow. The advantage of sitting out the season is that he can focus exclusively on his development. The idea of granting Hawthorne a redshirt year gains strength when considering the overall picture of his career. He finished as the 35th best overall prospect and the 9th best forward in the class of 2025, rapidly climbing the rankings during the draft cycle. This meteoric rise suggests he is only beginning to scratch the surface of his potential. Giving him a year to strengthen his physique, refine his technical skills, and absorb Pope's tactical system may be exactly what he needs to take off as a dominant player the following season. Rumors suggest that with careful development, he could be a lottery pick in the 2027 draft, following the footsteps of other Kentucky stars who used the university as a springboard to the NBA. However, the decision isn't just technical. It also carries emotional and psychological implications. For a young athlete, especially someone as talented as Hawthorne, being on the sidelines while his teammates compete can be frustrating. There's a risk that the lack of immediate visibility will affect his motivation or self-confidence. Pope and his coaching staff need to ensure he understands the benefits of the red shirt, not as a step backward, but as an investment in his future. The final decision hasn't been made yet, but all indications are that Kentucky is inclined to grant Hawthorne the redshirt year. This would allow him to work on his physique, adjust his competitive mindset, and enter the 2026-27 season ready to take on a leading role.
Sometimes, it's not in a decisive play, nor in the three-pointer that falls in the last second, that a leader reveals himself. In Kentucky, the clearest clue to the heart of this team didn't come from a box score, but from a simple Instagram post. After the loss to Michigan State, a moment when rumors of disunity and internal friction began to surface, Colin Chandler responded not with defensive speeches, not with indirect messages, but with a gesture that said everything Kentucky needed to hear. In the image he posted, Chandler is intentionally absent. All the other players are highlighted. In the short, unadorned text, just 2 words with foundational weight. I love you guys. In times of inflated egos, nil, transfer portals, and athletes who think of themselves before the group, it was almost shocking in its simplicity. The post went viral among BBN, but the real impact appeared in the comments. Each player left their mark. Each response sounded like a foundation brick. Alvin Brooks, Pope's assistant, responded with almost emotional sincerity. Asterisk, that almost made me cry. I love you guys. I love you, family. Asterisk words that are not written when the locker room is fractured. The gesture doesn't erase defeats, but sometimes it holds the structure together when it seems to waver. Kentucky didn't start the season as the fans imagined, and big games left technical scars exposed. Still, if there's a lesson in this post, it's that the team still breathes together, that the core hasn't broken, that the group has within it a player willing to put us above me. For a young, transitioning roster, that's worth as much as a dominant center or an additional year of experience. And the most curious thing, Chandler leads not only off the court, but on it as well. His 51.4% three-point shooting percentage is fuel for an offense that had to deal with Kobe Bryant's departure and doubts about spacing. The question was natural. Who would replace the reliable shooter? The answer, at least for now, is a name with the coolness of a veteran and the posture of a captain. When Mark Pope opened the preseason training session to the press, it was Chandler who translated instruction for his teammates, who called the athletes to their correct positions, who talked while Pope drew. He leads because he produces, but he produces because he leads. His history explains part of this. He's a sophomore, but he doesn't look like one. He has age marriage and a life lived outside the college bubble. While many still understand what responsibility means, he has already lived it in practice. He's the type of player who doesn't need to talk much to be heard. He just needs to be present. The upcoming schedule doesn't allow for distractions. Gonzaga, North Carolina, Indiana, and St. John's form a sequence that tests pressure, character, and consistency. Kentucky has talent, expectations, and doubts, but now it has something more concrete. It has an internal compass. If this season turns things around, and basketball usually rewards teams that survive their own ghosts, perhaps we'll look at that image as a point of emotional reconstruction. The photo where Chandler said, "Love you guys," without appearing in it. Comment,